I sat on my bed, the weight of a decade of memories crashing down around me. My name is Sarah, and I'm 38 years old. I had shared my life with Mark, my husband, for 10 long years, building dreams and a future together. But everything changed in an instant when a cold text shattered my world. He was leaving me for a younger woman. My heart raced as disbelief washed over me. How could the man I loved betray me so easily? I felt a whirlwind of emotions, anger, sadness, and a deep betrayal. I had given him everything, and now, as I stared at the glowing screen, I realized that my life was about to change in ways I could never have imagined. Little did he know, I had a surprise up my sleeve that would turn his world upside down. I sat in my small apartment, looking at the walls that once felt warm and inviting. My name is Sarah. I am 38 years old and a graphic designer. I had been married to Mark for 10 years. We built a life together, filled with love and dreams. We shared laughter and plans for the future. We thought we would grow old together. But today was different. Today, my world felt like it was falling apart. I picked up my phone, and there it was, a text from Mark. It was short and cold. He said he was leaving me for a younger woman. My heart sank. I read the message again. I thought I must be dreaming. This could not be real. I felt a rush of emotions, shock, anger, and betrayal. I had sacrificed so much for us. I had supported his dreams, even when it meant putting my own on hold. I thought we were happy. I thought we were a team. But now, all I felt was disbelief. I stared at the screen, hoping for a different message. But it did not change. I remembered the good times. Our trips, the laughter, and quiet evenings together. We had plans for the future. We talked about kids and houses. I had imagined us growing old, sitting on a porch, sharing stories. But now, it all felt like a lie. The signs were there, but I had ignored them. Mark had become distant. He spent more time at work and less time with me. I thought it was just stress. I never thought he would leave. I wanted to scream. I wanted to cry. Instead, I sat there, frozen. I had to know why. I needed answers. I picked up my phone and called him. It rang and rang. I felt my heart race. Finally, he picked up. I asked him why. His voice was calm. He told me it was over. He said he had found someone else. I felt my chest tighten. I could not believe what I was hearing. I asked him if it was serious. He said yes. I wanted to cry, but I held it in. I demanded to know why he did not talk to me before making this choice. He said he had tried but felt I would not understand. I felt lost. I hung up the phone and dropped it on the table. I took a deep breath. I needed support. I called my best friend, Emily. She answered quickly, sensing my distress. I told her everything. I could hear her sharp intake of breath. She was shocked too. She listened as I poured out my heart. Emily told me to take care of myself. She said I needed to rediscover who I was. She reminded me that I was strong and talented. I had always been. I felt a little better talking to her. She promised to come over. I needed her. As I waited for Emily, I looked around my apartment. It felt empty and cold. Memories of happier times flooded my mind. The photos on the walls, the gifts we exchanged, all felt like reminders of a life I thought I knew. I felt anger rising inside me. How could he do this? How could he throw away everything we built together? I thought about my career. I loved design. I had dreams of making art that inspired people. But now, those dreams felt far away. I felt trapped in this pain. I wanted to escape. I wanted to forget everything. But I knew I had to face the truth. I needed to find a way to move forward. Emily arrived a short while later. She walked in with a warm smile and a hug. It felt good to see her. I told her everything again, and she listened carefully. She offered me a cup of tea, and we sat on the couch. I felt safe with her. "You need to take care of yourself, Sarah," she said. "You cannot let this define you." Her words struck me. I had to find a way to reclaim my life. I had to find my strength again. Over the next few days, I felt like I was on a roller coaster of emotions. Some moments, I felt angry and strong. Other times, I felt weak and lost. I tried to keep busy with work. I focused on my projects, but my mind kept drifting back to Mark. I found myself staring at the empty spaces where we shared our lives. One evening, as I sat at my desk, I decided to create something. I grabbed my sketch pad and began to draw. I let my feelings flow through my hands. I drew images of heartbreak, loss, and strength. The colors clashed, but they felt real. I poured my pain onto the page. It felt good to express myself. I realized that art was my way of coping. It was a form of therapy. I lost track of time as I created. For the first time in days, I felt a flicker of hope. I could channel my hurt into something beautiful. I could reclaim my identity. Then, out of nowhere, I received a surprise. A letter arrived from a distant relative who had passed away. I opened it and discovered I had inherited an art collection. It was worth a significant amount of money. I felt a rush of emotions. This was unexpected news. I decided to keep this information to myself. It felt like a secret weapon. I thought about how I could use this to empower myself. I wanted to stand on my own 2 feet. I wanted to be independent. The thought made me feel stronger. I could build a new life for myself. I could prove to Mark that I was capable of more than he ever recognized. I looked in the mirror and saw a woman who had been hurt but was ready to fight back. I was done feeling sorry for myself. I wanted to reclaim my life, my dreams, and my art. I was ready for this new chapter. I was ready to rediscover myself. After the shock of Mark's text, my life felt like it was in a fog. Each day blended into the next, and I struggled to find my footing. My heart ached, and I felt lost. I had not just lost my husband, I had lost my future, the life I thought we would share. I spent hours staring at my sketches. The art was there, but my heart wasn't in it. I would pick up my pencil only to put it down in frustration. I felt like I was living in a shadow. My emotional state felt heavy, like a weight pulling me down. I wanted to fight against it, but I didn't know how. Emily was my anchor during this time. She checked in on me every day. She encouraged me to talk about my feelings. I would sit on the couch, tears streaming down my face, sharing my pain with her. She listened patiently, never judging. She reminded me that it was okay to feel hurt. One evening, Emily came over with takeout. We sat in my living room, eating and talking. She asked me how I was really feeling. That question opened the floodgates. I told her I felt betrayed. I told her I felt like I had wasted 10 years of my life. I could see the concern in her eyes. She reached out and held my hand. "You need to confront him," she said gently. "You deserve answers." I hesitated. I didn't want to see Mark again. I didn't want to feel his presence, the man who shattered my world. But deep down, I knew she was right. I needed closure. I needed to understand. After a few days of thinking, I decided to reach out to Mark. I sent him a text asking to meet. Surprisingly, he agreed. My stomach churned with nerves as I prepared for our meeting. I chose a small cafe where we used to go. It felt familiar but also strange. When I saw Mark, my heart raced. He looked different. He was wearing a new jacket, one I didn't recognize. He seemed to carry himself with a sense of confidence that made me uneasy. We sat down, and the silence between us felt heavy. I took a deep breath and asked him why he had made this choice. His response was vague. He said he was unhappy and felt trapped. I wanted to scream. How could he feel trapped when I had always supported him? I pressed on, wanting to know more. but Mark was evasive. He spoke about wanting to find himself. He avoided taking responsibility for his actions. I felt a mix of anger and sadness. I realized that he was the same man I had loved, but he was now someone I didn't recognize. I left the cafe feeling frustrated. I had wanted answers, but he had only offered excuses. That night, I sat on my couch, angry tears streaming down my face. I felt lost again, but I also felt a flicker of determination. I needed to find my own path. Emily encouraged me to focus on myself, to rediscover who I was before Mark. She suggested I try a support group for women who had experienced infidelity. I was hesitant at first. I didn't want to share my pain with strangers. But I also knew I couldn't do this alone. The first meeting was intimidating. The room was filled with women, each with their own stories of heartbreak. I listened as they shared their experiences. Some were angry, some were sad, and some were healing. I felt a connection to their pain. As I listened, I realized I was not alone. When it was my turn to speak, I felt nervous. I spoke about my marriage, my dreams, and the betrayal. It felt good to share. The women nodded in understanding. They offered words of encouragement. I left the meeting feeling lighter. I knew I had found a place where I belonged. As the weeks went by, I attended the support group regularly. I made friends, including Rachel, who had a similar story. We bonded over our shared experiences. She was kind and funny, and she helped me see things from a different perspective. Rachel encouraged me to take up new hobbies. She suggested we take a painting class together. At first, I hesitated. I didn't feel ready to dive into art again. But with her support, I decided to give it a try. The first class was nerve-wracking. I felt rusty and unsure of myself. But as I began to paint, something changed. I felt a sense of freedom. I was expressing my feelings through color and brushstrokes. I let go of my fears and doubts. It was liberating. Through painting, I began to rediscover my passion. I found joy in creating once more. I painted my emotions, my anger, my sadness, my hope. Each stroke of the brush was a step toward healing. I was reclaiming my identity, piece by piece. As I continued to paint, I also focused on my physical health. I started jogging in the mornings. It was tough at first, but I felt stronger with each run. The exercise helped clear my mind. I was learning to take care of myself, to put my needs first. Slowly, I felt a shift in my mindset. I was no longer just a victim of betrayal. I was a woman finding her strength. I was learning to embrace my life without Mark. I was ready to move forward. The support group, my friends, and my art helped me heal. I realized that I could build a new life. I could be happy again. I could find love and joy without Mark. I was learning to embrace the future. And as I reflected on my journey, I felt a sense of hope. I was ready to take the next steps in my life. I was ready to reclaim my dreams and discover who I was meant to be. I was not just surviving, I was starting to thrive. As I settled into my new routine, I felt a growing sense of purpose. My days were filled with painting, jogging, and meeting with my support group. I began to find joy in the small things again. But one day, something unexpected happened that would change everything. I received a letter in the mail from a distant relative who had passed away. I opened it with curiosity. Inside was a note explaining that I had inherited an art collection. My heart raced as I read the details. The collection was worth a significant amount of money. I couldn't believe what I was reading. At first, I felt a wave of excitement. This was a chance to start fresh. I imagined how I could use this money to support my art career. I could take classes, buy supplies, or even find a small studio space. The possibilities were endless. But then, a thought crept in. I knew I had to keep this a secret from Mark. I realized that this inheritance could be leverage in my situation. Mark had left me with nothing but heartache. I wanted to reclaim my power. Keeping this information to myself felt like a way to do just that. I decided to hold on to this secret tightly. As the days passed, I focused on my art even more. I poured my emotions into my paintings, exploring themes of strength and rebirth. I found solace in creating. I began to feel a sense of empowerment. I was no longer defined by my past or by Mark's choices. In my support group, I shared my excitement about the inheritance. Rachel was thrilled for me. She said it was a sign that good things were coming my way. I felt her support lift my spirits even higher. One evening, as I was painting in my living room, I received a text from Mark. He wanted to meet again. I felt a mix of anxiety and determination. I agreed, knowing I had to confront him again. I wanted to stand my ground. When we met, the air was tense. We sat at a cafe, and I could see he was nervous. He started talking about his new life. He mentioned his girlfriend and how happy he was. I felt anger bubbling inside me. How could he be happy when he had hurt me so deeply? I took a deep breath and confronted him about his spending habits. I had been gathering evidence, watching how he had drained our joint account. I told him I knew about his irresponsible choices. He looked taken aback, and for a moment, I could see cracks in his confident facade. Mark became defensive. He insisted that he was taking care of himself now. He said I was being unfair. But I stood my ground. I told him I was not going to let him manipulate me anymore. I was reclaiming my power, and he needed to understand that. After our meeting, I felt a rush of emotions. I was proud of myself. I had confronted him with strength. I was no longer the woman who would accept his lies. I was moving forward, reclaiming my life, and I felt empowered. As I continued to create art, I also began to explore new opportunities. I started applying to local galleries to showcase my work. I wanted to share my journey through my art. I wanted others to see that it was possible to overcome pain and find strength. The support from my friends, especially Rachel, fueled my ambition. She encouraged me to embrace my voice as an artist. I began to see my paintings not just as expressions of my pain but as symbols of growth and healing. I spent long hours in my studio, surrounded by colors and canvases. Each piece I created told a story of resilience. I felt alive and inspired. I was becoming the artist I always wanted to be. One evening, as I was putting the finishing touches on a new piece, I received a message from my support group. They were organizing an art showcase for the women in the group. I felt a rush of excitement. This was my chance to share my work and my story. I decided to participate. I poured my heart into my paintings, creating pieces that reflected my journey. I wanted to show others that healing was possible. I wanted to inspire them to find strength in their own stories. As the day of the showcase approached, I felt nervous but ready. I practiced my speech, wanting to share my story with authenticity. I wanted to connect with others who had faced similar challenges. I wanted to show them that they, too, could reclaim their lives. The night of the showcase arrived. The gallery was filled with people, and I felt a mix of excitement and fear. I hung my paintings on the wall, each piece representing a part of my journey. As I looked around, I saw other women sharing their stories through their art. It was powerful. When it was my turn to speak, I took a deep breath. I shared my experience of betrayal and loss, but I also spoke about healing and hope. I told them about my journey of rediscovery and how art had saved me. I saw tears in some eyes, and I felt a sense of connection. After the event, many people came up to me, expressing their appreciation for my story. They shared their own experiences and thanked me for my honesty. I felt a sense of fulfillment. I was no longer just surviving, I was thriving. I realized that my journey was not just about overcoming Mark's betrayal, it was about embracing who I am. I was becoming the woman I had always wanted to be. I was gaining confidence and strength. As I reflected on everything, I felt grateful. I had found a community that supported me. I had rediscovered my passion for art. And I had learned that I was capable of more than I ever imagined. The inheritance was not just a financial boost, it was a symbol of my journey. I was ready to build a life filled with creativity and connection. I was ready to embrace whatever came next. I felt empowered, and I was excited for the future. After the art showcase, I felt a spark of hope. I was starting to believe in myself again. My art was gaining attention, and the support from my friends was uplifting. But I knew I needed to focus on my well-being too. I wanted to rebuild my strength, both mentally and physically. I started a new routine. I woke up early each morning to go jogging. At first, it was hard to get out of bed. My body ached from the lack of exercise. But I pushed through. Each run became a small victory. I felt my energy returning with each step. The fresh air cleared my mind, and I began to see the world in a new light. I also invested time in my mental health. I signed up for yoga classes. The stretching and breathing helped me relax. I learned to let go of my worries, even if it was just for an hour. In class, I found peace. I met other women who were also on their journeys of healing. We shared our stories and encouraged each other. It was comforting to connect with others who understood. One evening, after a yoga class, I met up with Rachel for coffee. We sat outside, enjoying the warm weather. She asked me how I was feeling after the showcase. I told her I felt lighter, more like myself. Rachel smiled and said she could see the change in me. She encouraged me to keep pushing forward. "Let's go to a support group meeting together this week," she suggested. "I think it will help you even more." I agreed. I knew that having someone by my side would make it easier. We went to the meeting, and I felt a sense of belonging. The stories shared in the group reminded me that I was not alone. I was part of a community that was healing and growing together. As the weeks went by, I began to make new friendships. I connected with women who had similar experiences. We started to form a bond, sharing our struggles and victories. I felt stronger with each passing day. I was learning to trust myself again. One day, while painting in my studio, I received a message from Rachel. She wanted to grab lunch. We met at a local cafe, and she excitedly shared her latest news. She had signed up for a weekend retreat focused on self-discovery and creativity. "You should join me," she said. "It will be a great way to step back and focus on yourself." I hesitated at first. The idea of going away for a weekend felt daunting. But I realized it could be an opportunity to reflect and recharge. I decided to take the leap and join her. The weekend retreat was held in a beautiful cabin by a lake. When we arrived, I felt a wave of tranquility wash over me. The scenery was breathtaking. Nature surrounded us, and I felt the stress of my daily life begin to fade. The retreat was filled with activities designed to help us reconnect with ourselves. We meditated, explored the woods, and participated in creative workshops. Each day felt like a gift. I found myself opening up and exploring my emotions in a safe space. During one workshop, we were asked to create vision boards. I gathered magazines and cut out images and words that resonated with me. As I pieced together my board, I felt a sense of clarity. I envisioned the life I wanted, a life filled with art, joy, and meaningful connections. I looked at my board and realized I wanted to focus on my art career. I wanted to showcase my work in bigger galleries. I wanted to inspire others through my journey. I felt a fire ignite within me. I was ready to pursue my dreams wholeheartedly. As the retreat came to an end, I felt renewed. I had formed deeper connections with the women there. We shared laughter, stories, and support. I realized I had built a network of strong women who lifted each other up. When we returned home, I felt inspired to take action. I started reaching out to galleries, submitting my work for exhibitions. I felt nervous but excited. I was ready to share my art with the world. I also continued to nurture my friendships. I spent more time with Rachel and the other women from the support group. We would meet for coffee or go for walks in the park. I cherished these moments. They reminded me that I was not alone in my journey. As I focused on my art, I also made a commitment to self-care. I set aside time each week to relax and recharge. I read books, practiced yoga, and spent time outdoors. I learned the importance of balance in my life. With each passing day, I felt more confident and empowered. I was no longer the woman who had been hurt and betrayed. I was a woman who had faced challenges and come out stronger. I was reclaiming my identity. One evening, as I was painting in my studio, I received an email from a local gallery. They wanted to showcase my work in an upcoming exhibit. I could hardly believe it. My heart raced with excitement. This was the opportunity one had dreamed of. I immediately called Rachel to share the news. She was thrilled for me and insisted on celebrating. We went out for dinner, and I felt a sense of hope and joy. I was taking steps toward the life I had always wanted. As the date of the exhibit approached, I felt a mix of nerves and anticipation. I prepared my pieces, carefully selecting the ones that represented my journey. Each painting told a story of resilience and strength. The night of the exhibit arrived, and I stood in the gallery, surrounded by my art. I felt proud of what I had accomplished. I was ready to share my story with others. My heart swelled with excitement as people admired my work. I realized that this was just the beginning. I was becoming the artist I had always wanted to be. I was embracing my future with open arms. I had learned to love myself again, and I was excited for what lay ahead. The journey was not over, but I was ready to face it with courage and strength. As the days turned into weeks after my exhibit, I felt a new sense of hope. My art was being recognized, and I was starting to see the fruits of my hard work. But just as I was finding my footing, I stumbled upon a shocking discovery about Mark that shook me to my core. It began one evening when I was scrolling through social media. I came across a post from a mutual friend. There, in the background of the photo, I saw Mark with his new girlfriend. They were at a fancy restaurant, laughing and enjoying themselves. My heart sank as I noticed the expensive items around them. The lavish lifestyle they shared was apparent. I couldn't shake the feeling of anger and betrayal. I had worked hard to rebuild my life, and here he was, living a life that seemed to come at the expense of our shared finances. I felt the sting of his choices more than ever. I had trusted him, and now he was spending our savings on luxury while I was left to pick up the pieces. I decided to dig deeper. I started reviewing our joint bank account statements from the past few months. The more I looked, the more I found. He had been spending money on expensive dinners, designer clothes, and lavish trips. I felt a mix of rage and sadness. How could he do this to us? I gathered all the evidence, printing out the transactions and noting down the dates. I felt empowered. I was no longer the victim, I was reclaiming my narrative. I was ready to confront him again. This time I would have information on my side. I reached out to Mark and asked to meet. I was nervous but determined. When we met at the same cafe, I felt a rush of emotions. I had prepared myself for this moment. I was no longer afraid of him. I was ready to stand my ground. As we sat down, I could see he was relaxed, a smug look on his face. I knew he felt like he had one. But I was ready to change that. I opened my folder and laid out the evidence of his spending. "Mark, we need to talk about your choices," I said firmly. His expression shifted from relaxed to defensive. "What do you mean?" he asked, trying to feign innocence. I pointed to the transactions. "You've been using our joint account to fund your new life. This is not fair. You left me with nothing, and now you are living it up while I struggle." He glanced at the papers, and I saw the moment he realized I knew the truth. His face flushed. "That's not what it looks like," he stammered. "I have my own money now." I shook my head. "This is not about your money. This is about how you treated me. You didn't even think twice about draining our account. I supported you for years, and now you are throwing it all away." He tried to justify his actions, saying he was just trying to be happy. But I could see through his excuses. I stood my ground. You have no right to manipulate me anymore. I deserve better. As I spoke, I felt a surge of confidence. I was no longer the woman who would accept his lies. I was reclaiming my power. I could see that Mark was rattled. He was no longer in control of the situation. After our confrontation, I felt a wave of relief wash over me. I had stood up for myself. I had confronted the man who had hurt me. It was a turning point in my journey. I felt empowered to move forward. But as time passed, I noticed Mark becoming desperate. He began to reach out to mutual friends, trying to sway their opinions. He spread rumors about me, claiming I was hiding assets. I could see he was trying to manipulate the narrative. I refused to let it affect me. I focused on my art and my friendships. My support group rallied around me, lifting me up when I felt down. Rachel was by my side, reminding me of my strength. Whenever I felt the weight of Mark's actions, she encouraged me to focus on my journey. As I prepared for another upcoming art show, I poured my heart into my work. I wanted to showcase my growth and resilience. I wanted my art to tell the story of overcoming betrayal. Each brushstroke became a representation of my journey. The night of the show arrived, and I was filled with excitement. I set up my pieces, each one telling a different story of strength and healing. Friends and family came to support me, filling the gallery with warmth and encouragement. I felt proud of how far I had come. As I stood in front of my paintings, I reflected on everything that had led me here. I had faced the darkness and emerged stronger. I was no longer defined by my past. I was ready to embrace my future. Throughout the night, many people approached me, sharing how my art resonated with them. They thanked me for being brave enough to share my story. I felt a sense of purpose. I was not just an artist, I was a voice for those who had been through similar experiences. After the show, as I packed up my paintings, I received a message from Mark. He wanted to talk again. I felt a mix of emotions. I was no longer afraid of him, but I also didn't want to engage in his games. I decided to ignore his message. I was done allowing him to manipulate my feelings. I had faced him and confronted the truth. I had stood my ground. I was ready to move forward without him in my life. As I left the gallery that night, I felt a sense of freedom I hadn't felt in years. I realized that I was finally free from the chains of my past. I was reclaiming my life, my art, and my dreams. I was ready for whatever came next. I was excited about the future and all the possibilities it held. The storm had passed, and I was no longer looking back. I was stepping into my new life with confidence, strength, and hope. After the art show, I felt a rush of empowerment. I had embraced my story, and I was ready to move forward. But then Mark reached out again. This time, he wanted to meet in person. I hesitated. Part of me wanted to ignore him completely, but I also felt a need to confront him one last time. I agreed to meet at a park, a neutral ground. When I arrived, I saw him sitting on a bench, looking tense and anxious. He glanced up as I approached, and I could see the uncertainty in his eyes. This was different from our previous meetings, he seemed to be searching for something. "Thanks for coming," he said, his voice lacking its usual confidence. I nodded, waiting for him to speak. He took a deep breath and started to talk about how he had been feeling. He mentioned regrets and how things hadn't turned out as he had hoped. I listened, trying to remain calm. I wanted to hear what he had to say, but I also wanted to stay firm. He talked about how he was trying to make things right. "I know I hurt you, Sarah. I'm sorry for how I treated you," he said, his words sounding almost rehearsed. I felt a mix of emotions. Part of me wanted to believe him, but another part of me remembered the pain he had caused. "You can't just say you're sorry and expect everything to be okay," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "You made choices that affected both of us." Mark nodded, his expression serious. "I know. I was selfish. I thought I could find happiness without thinking about the consequences. But I realize now how wrong I was. I looked at him, trying to gauge his sincerity. Do you really understand what you did? You left me with nothing and then drained our account while living it up with someone else. He looked down, shame washing over his face. I know I messed up, and I'm trying to change. I just want a chance to make things right. I took a deep breath. I had to stand my ground. Making things right doesn't mean trying to manipulate me into forgiving you. You need to face the consequences of your actions. He shifted uncomfortably on the bench. I could see the frustration in his eyes. I'm not trying to manipulate you, Sarah. I just want to talk. I want to be honest. I felt a flicker of anger rise again. Honesty is more than just words. It's about actions too. You need to show that you can take responsibility. He stared at me for a moment, and I could see he was struggling to find the right words. I've been talking to a therapist. I'm trying to figure things out. I want to be a better person. I felt a part of me soften. It was good that he was seeking help, but that didn't change the past. That's great to hear, but it doesn't change what you did to me, I said firmly. I need to focus on my future, not on your regrets. Mark nodded, looking defeated. I understand. I just wanted you to know that I'm sorry. I don't expect you to forgive me right away. I appreciated his honesty, but it didn't change my feelings. I need time, Mark. I need to heal, and I can't do that if you keep trying to pull me back into your drama. He looked down, and I could see the weight of my words sinking in. I won't bother you anymore. I just wanted to clear the air. I felt a mix of sadness and relief. This was the closure I needed. Thank you for understanding. I hope you find what you're looking for, but I'm moving on. As we parted ways, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. I had stood firm and confronted him. I had made it clear that I was no longer his victim. I was reclaiming my life, my choices, and my future. In the days that followed, I focused on my art and my friendships. I felt lighter and more empowered. I continued to explore new opportunities, applying for more art shows and connecting with galleries. I was excited about the possibilities ahead. Rachel was by my side, cheering me on. She encouraged me to keep pushing my boundaries. You're growing more every day, Sarah. Don't stop now, she would say, her enthusiasm infectious. One day, as I was painting in my studio, I received an email from a prestigious gallery. They wanted to feature my work in a larger exhibition. I couldn't believe it. This was the opportunity one had been waiting for. I immediately called Rachel to share the news. This is huge, she exclaimed. You deserve this, Sarah. Your art speaks to people. As I prepared for the exhibition, I felt a mix of excitement and nerves. I knew this was a big step in my career. I poured my heart into my pieces, each one telling a story of resilience and strength. On the night of the exhibition, I arrived early to set up. The gallery was beautiful, filled with light and energy. As people began to arrive, I felt a rush of anticipation. I was ready to share my art with the world. Throughout the night, I talked to visitors about my work. I shared my journey and the emotions behind each piece. It felt incredible to connect with people who resonated with my story. I was no longer just an artist, I was a storyteller. As the evening progressed, I felt a sense of fulfillment. I was proud of how far I had come. I had faced my past and found the strength to rise above it. I was no longer defined by my relationship with Mark. Before the night ended, I received a compliment from a fellow artist. Your work is powerful, she said. It speaks volumes about resilience. Keep creating. Her words made my heart swell. I knew I was on the right path. The journey hadn't been easy, but I had emerged stronger and more determined than ever. As I packed up my paintings at the end of the night, I felt a wave of gratitude. I had reclaimed my life, my art, and my identity. I was ready to embrace whatever came next. I was no longer looking back, I was moving forward with confidence, hope, and a renewed sense of purpose. The weeks following my exhibition were a whirlwind of excitement. People were talking about my art, and I received invitations to showcase my work at other galleries. I felt a newfound confidence. My hard work was paying off, and I was finally getting the recognition I deserved. But amid the joy, I couldn't shake the feeling that Mark was still lurking in the background. I had not heard from him since our last meeting, and I was grateful for the silence. I was focused on my art and my friendships, but I couldn't help but wonder how he was dealing with the fallout of our separation. One evening, I met Rachel for dinner at our favorite restaurant. As we laughed and shared stories, I felt a sense of relief. I was becoming the person I had always wanted to be. But just as I was enjoying the moment, my phone buzzed with a message. I glanced at it and felt my heart drop. It was from Mark. He wanted to meet again. I took a deep breath, my stomach churning. Part of me wanted to ignore him, but another part felt a sense of responsibility. I had been honest with him before, and I should give him a chance to talk. I agreed to meet at the same park where we had our last conversation. When I arrived, I saw him sitting on the bench again. He looked different, more tired and worn out. As I approached, I noticed the tension in his shoulders. I sat down, and for a moment, we were both silent. "Thanks for meeting me," he said, his voice softer than usual. I nodded, waiting for him to continue. He took a deep breath and began to speak. "I've been thinking a lot about my life since we last talked. I realize now how much I took for granted. I messed up, and I want to take responsibility." I felt a mix of emotions. Part of me wanted to believe him, but another part remembered the pain he caused. "What do you mean by responsibility?" I asked carefully. He looked down, hesitation in his eyes. "I've started to face the consequences of my choices. I lost you, and I realize now that I pushed you away. I'm trying to change, but I know it's too late for us." I felt a pang of sympathy. It was clear he was struggling, but I had to protect myself. "Mark, it's good that you're seeking help, but that doesn't change what you did. You hurt me deeply." He nodded, looking defeated. "I know I can't undo the past. I just wanted to apologize and let you know that I'm trying to be a better person." I appreciated his honesty, but I was firm. Apologies are a start, but actions speak louder than words. You need to show that you can change. "I understand," he replied, his voice low. "I don't expect you to forgive me right away. I just wanted you to know that I'm working on myself." As we talked, I noticed the desperation in his eyes. It was clear he was struggling to find his way. "Mark, I hope you find what you're looking for," I said gently. "But I can't be part of your journey anymore." He looked at me, and I could see the pain in his expression. "I get it. I just wish things were different." "I do too," I replied. "But I have to focus on my own life now. I can't let you pull me back into your drama." After our conversation, I felt a mix of sadness and relief. I had faced him again, and I had been clear about my boundaries. I was proud of myself for standing firm. As the days went by, I noticed a shift in Mark. He seemed to be struggling more than before. I heard from mutual friends that he was having a hard time adjusting. The younger woman he had left me for was losing interest. It was clear that his new life wasn't as perfect as he had imagined. I felt a mix of satisfaction and pity. While I didn't want him to suffer, I couldn't help but feel he was facing the consequences of his choices. I had spent too long feeling sorry for him, and now it was time for me to focus on my own happiness. During this time, Rachel and I grew closer. We supported each other through our challenges. She encouraged me to explore new opportunities and pushed me to share my art more widely. I felt grateful to have her by my side. One evening, as we were having dinner, Rachel suggested we plan a weekend getaway. "We both deserve a break," she said. "Let's go somewhere new and just relax." The idea excited me. I had been so focused on my art and the past that I hadn't taken time for myself. We decided to head to a cabin in the mountains for the weekend. When we arrived, the beauty of nature overwhelmed me. The fresh air and stunning views were a welcome escape from the hustle of everyday life. We spent our days hiking, exploring, and talking about our dreams. During our time away, I felt a renewed sense of clarity. I realized that I was ready to embrace my future without Mark's shadow lingering over me. I wanted to focus on building my art career and connecting with people who inspired me. On the last night of our getaway, we sat around a campfire, roasting marshmallows and sharing our hopes for the future. I looked at Rachel and felt grateful for her friendship. "Thank you for being here with me," I said. "You've been such a support through everything." She smiled warmly. "We lift each other up. That's what friends are for." As the fire crackled, I reflected on my journey. I had faced betrayal and heartache, but I had also discovered my strength. I was reclaiming my life, my art, and my dreams. When we returned home, I felt revitalized. I was ready to take on new challenges and opportunities. I started reaching out to more galleries and artists, eager to expand my network. As I focused on my art career, I also made a commitment to myself to continue growing. I signed up for workshops and joined art communities. I wanted to be surrounded by people who inspired me. In the weeks that followed, I felt a sense of purpose and excitement. I was no longer looking back but instead embracing the future with open arms. I was ready to see where my journey would take me next. Through all the ups and downs, I had learned one important lesson: I was stronger than I ever realized. I was ready to face whatever came my way, and I was excited to continue on this path of growth and discovery. I was no longer defined by my past, I was ready to create my own future. As the weeks passed, I continued to grow and thrive in my art career. I was excited about the new opportunities that came my way. I was networking and collaborating with other artists, and I felt a sense of purpose. But just as I was finding my rhythm, I received a heartfelt letter from Mark. I opened the envelope with a mix of curiosity and apprehension. As I read his words, my heart sank. He wrote about his regrets and how he wished things had turned out differently. He expressed sorrow for the pain he had caused me and asked for my forgiveness. He wanted to reconnect and talk about the past. I felt a rush of emotions. Part of me wanted to believe him, but another part reminded me of the hurt he had caused. I set the letter aside, unsure of how to process it. I was still healing, and I didn't want to revisit the pain. That evening, I met Rachel for coffee. I shared the letter with her, and she listened intently. "What do you think?" she asked after I finished reading it. "Do you want to respond?" I took a deep breath. "I don't know. I feel like I've moved on, but part of me wants closure." Rachel nodded thoughtfully. "It's okay to want closure. Just remember, forgiveness is not for him, it's for you." Her words struck a chord with me. I realized that I needed to find a way to forgive, not for Mark, but for my own peace of mind. I didn't have to let him back into my life, but I could acknowledge my feelings and let go of the anger. That night, I sat down to write my response. I poured my heart into the letter, expressing my feelings about the past and how his actions had affected me. I told him that I appreciated his apology but explained that I needed to focus on my own healing. I wanted him to understand that forgiveness was a process, and it would take time. As I sealed the envelope, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. I was taking a step toward closure. I didn't need to carry the burden of anger anymore. I had learned to prioritize my own happiness. In the following days, I felt a sense of calm. I continued to work on my art, and I focused on building my connections in the art community. I attended workshops and met new artists who inspired me. Each conversation fueled my passion and creativity. One afternoon, while I was painting in my studio, I received a call from a local gallery. They wanted to feature my work in a solo exhibition. I couldn't believe it. This was the opportunity one had dreamed of, and I felt a rush of excitement. I immediately called Rachel to share the news. "This is amazing," she exclaimed. "You've worked so hard for this. Let's celebrate." We went out for dinner that night, and I felt a sense of joy and gratitude. I was surrounded by supportive friends who believed in me. I realized how important it was to have a strong network of people who lifted each other up. As the date of the exhibition approached, I poured my heart into preparing. I created new pieces that reflected my journey of healing and resilience. Each painting told a story of growth, and I was excited to share it with the world. On the night of the exhibition, the gallery was buzzing with energy. Friends, family, and fellow artists filled the space. I felt a mix of nerves and excitement as I set up my work. I wanted my art to resonate with others, to inspire them to find their own strength. As people began to arrive, I moved from one painting to another, sharing the stories behind each piece. I felt a connection with the viewers as they engaged with my work. I was no longer just an artist, I was a storyteller, sharing my journey through art. During the evening, I had several meaningful conversations. One woman approached me and shared how my work had touched her. She told me that she had faced similar challenges and found inspiration in my pieces. Her words filled my heart with warmth. I realized that my art was making a difference. As the night went on, I felt a sense of fulfillment. I had come so far from the pain and betrayal I once felt. I was no longer defined by my past. I was embracing my identity as an artist and a resilient woman. After the exhibition, I received feedback from the gallery owner. He praised my work and mentioned that he wanted to work with me on future projects. I felt a surge of excitement. This was just the beginning. In the days that followed, I received more inquiries about my art. I was gaining recognition in the community, and I felt proud of what I had accomplished. I was building a career that I had once only dreamed of. As I reflected on my journey, I realized that I had learned the power of resilience. I had faced heartbreak and emerged stronger. I had discovered my voice through art and found a supportive community around me. I was ready to embrace whatever came next. One evening, as I was winding down from a long day, I received another text from Mark. He wanted to thank me for my letter. He said it had helped him reflect on his actions and understand the impact of his choices. He expressed gratitude for my honesty. I took a deep breath, feeling a mix of emotions. I had forgiven him in my own way, but I knew I wasn't ready to let him back into my life. I responded with kindness, wishing him well but maintaining my boundaries. As I closed my phone, I felt a sense of peace. I was reclaiming my life, my art, and my dreams. I had learned to focus on my own happiness, and I was excited about the future. I was no longer holding on to the past, I was stepping into a new chapter filled with possibilities. I was ready to continue growing, creating, and embracing the journey ahead. Life was waiting for me, and I was prepared to take it on with open arms. The weeks following my solo exhibition were an exhilarating time. I felt a surge of creativity and purpose. My art was gaining attention, and I was excited to explore new opportunities. I had built a solid foundation for my career, and I was eager to see where it would lead me. As I continued to focus on my art, I also began to think about my personal life. I realized it had been a while since I had allowed myself to open up to the idea of dating again. I had spent so much time healing and rediscovering myself that I had put romance on the back burner. But now, I felt ready to explore that part of my life again. One evening, I met Rachel for dinner at a cozy restaurant. We talked about everything, from our careers to our dreams. As we shared a laugh over dessert, I decided to broach the subject. "You know, I've been thinking about dating again," I said, a bit shyly. Rachel's eyes lit up. "That's great. You deserve happiness, Sarah. Have you thought about how you want to approach it?" I nodded. "I want to take it slow. I don't want to rush into anything. I've learned to focus on myself first, and I want to keep that balance." She smiled. "That's a healthy mindset. Just remember to enjoy the process. You're in a great place right now." As we finished our dinner, I felt a sense of excitement and anxiety. The idea of dating again was both thrilling and intimidating. I knew I had a lot to offer, but I also had to remind myself to stay true to who I was. A few days later, I decided to take a leap of faith. I signed up for an online dating platform. I created a profile that reflected my interests, values, and the journey I had been on. I felt nervous but also hopeful. I was ready to meet new people and see where it might lead. As I browsed through profiles, I came across a man named Ben. He had a passion for art and shared similar interests. I felt drawn to his profile and decided to send him a message. To my surprise, he responded quickly, and we began chatting. Our conversations flowed easily. Ben was kind, funny, and genuine. We talked about our favorite art styles, shared stories from our lives, and laughed over silly memes. I felt a sense of connection with him that I hadn't felt in a long time. After a week of chatting, we decided to meet for coffee. I was excited but also a bit nervous. I wanted to make a good impression, but I also reminded myself to be authentic. I was no longer the woman defined by her past. I was ready to embrace new experiences. The day of our coffee date arrived, and my heart raced as I walked into the cafe. Ben was already there, sitting at a table with a warm smile. We greeted each other, and as we sat down, I felt a sense of ease. The conversation flowed effortlessly, and I found myself laughing and smiling. We talked about our favorite artists, our dreams, and our journeys. I shared my experience in the art world and how I was finding my voice. He listened intently, asking thoughtful questions. It felt refreshing to connect with someone who understood my passion. As our coffee date came to an end, I felt a spark of excitement. Ben asked if I'd like to meet again, and I eagerly agreed. We exchanged numbers and said our goodbyes, both smiling. The following days were filled with anticipation. I felt a mix of excitement and nervousness as I waited to see where this connection with Ben would lead. We texted frequently, and I found myself looking forward to our conversations. As we continued to meet, I learned more about him. Ben was supportive and encouraging, and he respected my journey. I felt comfortable being myself around him. It was a refreshing change, and I appreciated how he treated me as an equal. One evening, we decided to go to an art gallery together. As we walked through the exhibits, I felt a sense of joy. I loved sharing my passion with someone who appreciated it as much as I did. We discussed the pieces, and I could see the spark in his eyes as he engaged with the art. Afterward, we found a quiet spot in the gallery to talk. "I really admire how dedicated you are to your art," he said, looking at me with sincerity. "It's inspiring." I felt a warm rush at his words. "Thank you, Ben. That means a lot to me. Art has always been a big part of my life, and I love sharing it with others." As we stood there, I realized how much I had grown since my separation from Mark. I was no longer holding on to past pain. I was ready to embrace new relationships and experiences with an open heart. As our dates continued, I felt more connected to Ben. He made me laugh, and I enjoyed our time together. I began to see the potential for something more. But I also reminded myself to take it slow. One evening, as we sat on a park bench, watching the sunset, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. We talked about our dreams and aspirations, and I shared my vision for my art career. Ben listened, encouraging me to pursue my passions. "I believe in you, Sarah," he said, looking into my eyes. "You have so much talent. Don't ever doubt yourself." His support touched me deeply. I realized that I was not just finding love, I was finding someone who believed in me and my dreams. I felt grateful for this new chapter in my life. As I reflected on my journey, I recognized how far I had come. I had faced heartbreak, but I had also discovered my strength. I was reclaiming my identity, my art, and now, the possibility of love. I was excited about the future. I was ready to embrace the unknown and see where this new relationship would lead. I had learned to love myself first, and now, I was open to sharing that love with someone else. No matter what happened, I knew I was on the right path. I was building a life filled with creativity, connection, and hope. The journey was just beginning, and I was ready to embrace it with open arms. As the months passed, my life continued to flourish in ways I had never imagined. My art career was thriving, and I had built a solid support system of friends and fellow artists. I felt a sense of independence and strength that I had not experienced in years. Each day brought new opportunities, and I was eager to embrace them. My relationship with Ben blossomed into something beautiful. He respected my journey and encouraged me to pursue my dreams. We spent our weekends exploring art galleries, attending workshops, and enjoying each other's company. I felt a sense of joy and comfort that I had missed for so long. One afternoon, while we were painting together in my studio, I shared my vision of holding a solo art exhibition that would showcase my journey and growth. I wanted to create a space where others could connect with my story of resilience. Ben listened intently, his eyes shining with excitement. "I think that's an amazing idea," he said, his enthusiasm infectious. "You have so much to share with the world. Your art deserves to be seen." His support fueled my determination. I started planning the exhibition, pouring my heart into each piece I created. I wanted to tell my story through my art and inspire others who had faced their own challenges. As the exhibition date approached, I felt a mix of excitement and nerves. I wanted my art to resonate with others and to create a space where people could feel understood. I spent countless hours in my studio, focusing on the message I wanted to convey. On the night of the exhibition, the gallery was filled with friends, family, and new faces eager to see my work. The atmosphere was electric. I felt a surge of gratitude as I looked around at the people who had supported me throughout my journey. As guests began to arrive, I stood by my paintings, ready to share the stories behind each piece. I explained how my art represented my healing process and the strength I had found within myself. I could see the connection in their eyes as they engaged with my work. During the evening, I had meaningful conversations with attendees who related to my journey. One woman approached me and shared how my art had inspired her to pursue her own passions despite her struggles. Her words touched my heart. I realized that my art was making a difference, and that was incredibly fulfilling. As the night continued, I felt a sense of empowerment wash over me. I was no longer the woman defined by my past, I was a woman who had embraced her journey and emerged stronger. I was celebrating not just my art but also the resilience that had brought me to this moment. At one point, I found Ben in the crowd, watching me with a proud smile. I felt a rush of warmth seeing his support. He had been there for me throughout this journey, encouraging me every step of the way. I walked over to him, and he took my hand. "You did it, Sarah. Your art is incredible," he said softly, his eyes filled with admiration. "Thank you for believing in me," I replied, feeling grateful for his unwavering support. As the night came to a close, I stood back and took it all in. The gallery was filled with laughter, conversation, and appreciation for my work. I felt a deep sense of fulfillment. This was the culmination of my journey, a celebration of my growth and resilience. In the days following the exhibition, I received positive feedback and inquiries about my work. Galleries wanted to showcase my pieces, and I felt a sense of excitement for the future. I had built a career that was becoming more than I had ever dreamed. I also took the time to reflect on everything I had learned. I realized that my journey was not just about overcoming heartbreak, it was about discovering my strength and embracing my identity. I had learned to love myself and prioritize my happiness. One evening, as I sat in my studio, I looked around at the paintings that surrounded me. Each piece told a story of resilience, hope, and growth. I felt a sense of pride knowing that I had created something meaningful. As I continued to work on new projects, I also made a commitment to give back. I wanted to inspire others who had faced challenges like mine. I began volunteering at local art programs, teaching workshops for women who wanted to explore their creativity. Through these experiences, I connected with others who were on their own journeys of healing. I shared my story and encouraged them to find their voices through art. It felt incredible to witness their growth and creativity. My life was no longer defined by my past, it was filled with hope, love, and new beginnings. I had learned to embrace the unknown and to trust myself. I was excited about the future and all the possibilities it held. As I reflected on my journey, I felt grateful for every experience that had led me here. I had faced heartbreak, but I had also discovered my strength. I was ready to continue growing and creating, embracing whatever came next. I felt a sense of empowerment as I planned my next steps. I wanted to explore new themes in my art and continue sharing my story. I was no longer afraid of the past, I was ready to write the next chapter of my life. With each brushstroke, I was reclaiming my narrative and inspiring others along the way. My journey had shaped me, and I was excited to see where it would take me next. The future was bright, and I was ready to embrace it with open arms.